welcome back for another episode. SLMA Radio. The longest running show here on the Funnel Radio Network. The original show. The only show that shows you that has to do with sales lead management, sales lead marketing. It probably starts here with the SLMA Radio Show. Today, as always, we're privileged to have with us the founder and executive director of the SLMA, the Sales Lead Management Association, the man with the golden voice, who's not wearing one of his hats today. He's usually wearing a hat when I see him. Jim Obermayer. Hey, Jim.
Hello, Paul. How are you this morning?
Okay, you're hatless. You're going hatless today here. It must be warm where you are.
Yes, I'm going hatless. It's raining outside, but it's dry inside, and I just couldn't get my Ronald Reagan hat on in time for the broadcast.
You have this cool hat that really does look like Ronald. I think you got it made somewhere in Southern California, to imitate.
I got it made right out at the mission down there. Larry the Hat Maker.
Larry the Hat Maker. Well, we'll tell him next time I see him. I'll tell him you're still wearing it here.
He makes hats over at the mission. I went to a gun show a couple of years ago, and I was walking through the gun show there in Orange County. I had this hat on. I walked up to Larry's booth, and he didn't even look up. Now, he's dressed in period clothing. He does all the time anyway. He's never gotten out of the 1860s.
All right.
And he's sitting there working on a hat, and he doesn't say a word. He just keeps working. And finally, he says, nice hat.
Without even looking up, just nice.
Without even looking up, and I said, yeah, I got it from a friend of mine. He said, hats don't like that don't come along every day, do they? I said, no, it's just like Ronald Reagan's hat. And he said, as it should be. So anyway,
yep.
Larry the Hat Maker.
Larry the Hat Maker. We got to get Larry the Hat Maker on the show. See if he's. I'll go find him and see if he's still around here. Well, today we're going to talk about what? We're going to talk about one of my favorite topics. We're going to talk about 5 questions before you start a podcast. Boy, I can come up with at least 5 of those.
I've actually got 6 today as a bonus because, just like a PowerPoint, we can change anything before a broadcast. So. Well, as you know, Paul, there are about 850,000 podcast shows out there, 30 million episodes as of 2020. Apple Podcasts has podcasts in more than 100 languages, and 51% of the U.S. population has listened to a podcast. That's 144 million people, and you've been a part of that, Paul, for about 14, 15 years.
Yeah. In fact, the last statistic you just quoted is from the Edison report. Everybody should go check it out, called The Infinite Dial. There's a new one coming out in a couple of weeks, but the one that came out last year, in their conclusion where they study radio and satellite radio and smart speakers and audio, they said this is the year of podcasting. It reached a tipping point because when they surveyed Americans, they said, do you know what a podcast is? Half of them said, I know, because I listened to one in the last 30 days. In the last 30 days, half of Americans have listened to a podcast. That's a powerful new medium. This isn't just a passing trend. This isn't just recorded radio. It's something different.
Well, as you know, in the Funnel Radio channel, we've been adding shows about once a month for the last 6 or 8 months.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You can see the growth of it just here on this channel, how many more people are embracing. And I think I'll just give you my quick read on it, and then you can talk about what they should do before they start one. The Columbia School of Journalism did an article years ago, and they said this is a weird medium. Everything else is getting shorter, faster, more condensed, shorter videos, shorter tweets, all this stuff. And yet, here's the one medium going the other way. They couldn't explain it. I think I can after 10 years of doing these. It's the return to long-form storytelling. Think about it. You get 30 minutes to tell your story instead of 30 seconds because people are stuck in a car, they're at the gym, they're walking. There's someplace they can't watch, they can't read, but they still want to be productive. Tell me a story. It's not easy to switch. They're not constantly hitting a button saying, no, 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 tell me something else like on traditional radio buttons. You get 30 minutes to tell your story. You got an ongoing conversation, too, that you can have with them. Long-form storytelling doesn't exist anywhere else.
I agree with you. And just last night, I was over at the gym and I was on the treadmill and I had my telephone. I forgot my book. I had my telephone. So I dialed into Revenue Optimization Radio.
There you go.
Patrick Morrissey.
There you go.
And instead of staying on the treadmill 20 minutes, I stayed on 30 minutes, listened to his entire program.
Yeah. And I think TED Talks are around 20 minutes. I think most podcasts are 20 or 30 minutes because that's the average gym time, walk time, drive time, all that. I think that's the sweet spot. There are ones that are longer, 2 or 3 hours. I don't know that that's the way the world's moving. And I don't think it's 1 or 2 minute sound bites. I think it's 30 minutes of good conversation, storytelling conversation. I think it's not facts and figures either. It's tell me a story, because I can't write down and remember all the statistics you're giving, but a story will stick in my head, and I'll probably share it with somebody that day.
Very much so. Now, podcasts are popular because they're easy to do. Mm-hmm. They're inexpensive. They're authentic because people are talking usually unscripted.
Right.
Listening is easier than watching. Certainly video is a big, big deal when you're sitting in front of a screen or sitting in front of your computer.
Well, you got to stop it. You got to stop. This you can multitask and do other things, and I think that's the unrecognized power of it.
And then lastly, it creates branding for the company and the host. And what do they stand for? Who are they? What's their personal brand? Can they talk to customers?
Right.
Do they want to do internal podcasting? It's very interesting how it has been expanding. As you know, we started SLMA Radio primarily so I could interview people, CEOs at major sales lead management and CRM companies.
Right.
5 years into it, we started our own channel.
And to create content, because everybody needs, you got all these channels to fill up, social media, your website. I always say to people, I'm sure you got a great website. Oh, yeah, we put $1 million into it. Once I've been there, why would I ever come back? And they give you that deer in the headlight look. You've got to become your own media company. You've got to create content all the time to get found, to get engagement, to get people to come back.
Well, I said to you a couple of days ago, I was sitting in your studio with an SLMA radio program 7 years ago, and we had a guest on there, and he had said to us, you've got to be your own media company. Now, that's not the first time I've heard that, but it's the first time it stuck with me.
Right.
And as that guest got off of the program, I looked at you and I said, Paul, can we start producing programs for other companies? And he said, we can start tomorrow. That's what you said.
Exactly.
We can start tomorrow. So we started with Jeannie Hopkins. She's been with Continuum and from several companies. And she's now with Lola.
Right.
And then Matt Hines. And we've started with a lot of companies. And now we've got 14 on the channel.
And look how many have been with you for years now, too. This isn't something they sort of try and say, oh, that was a passing fancy. It really is a way to tell stories. And we just did a WVU, West Virginia University, has a show with you guys. Incredible show with their data marketing communications. We just finished it a few minutes ago. And it was with one of the senior strategists, communications people at General Motors. And she was talking with another guest about this whole topic, brand and stories, storytelling. We all want to go back to story. Tell me your passion story. Tell me your purpose story, your origin, how you got started. Those are things podcasts are designed for. You've got the time to spin out a story. It's very intimate. It's you one-on-one speaking through their smartphone or their earbuds.
I was listening, and Whitney Drake from GM did a great job. Of course, she's the host on WVU,
right,
West Virginia University, but she was her first time hosting, and she's got a nice deep voice. And
she does.
She seemed to have fun with that.
We were laughing because in her regular voice, she doesn't sound like that. But the minute we put her on the mic, she's got like this. Hi, how are you? This is Whitney. And we were laughing because I grew up in Detroit, and there were some famous deep voice DJs, and we were reminiscing of those days here, the late night DJs, you know. Everybody gets like that.
Well, let's get to our 6 questions.
All right.
First of all, if you're thinking of a podcast, you've got to decide why you're doing a podcast. What's the real goal of it? Is it to launch some kind of a product initiative? Is it to build a personal brand? Or maybe it's just to boost the egos of your executives or the clients. Right. You can give value to your existing clients by having them on the podcast. You can open the door for new clients and prospects. One show started here because he said, well, I don't care how many people listen, but I do want to introduce my company to a lot of people that can recommend us.
And think about that. That's a powerful, that sounds almost, everybody's going to smile when they say that. I won't say laughable, but it's a real power to this. Hey, can I take you to lunch and tell you about my accounting company? No. Or my sales company? How about me sending you stuff? Heck no. How about being on my radio show? Ooh, you got a radio show? What's the catch? No catch. You come on. I share the content with my audience. Station channel sends it with their audience, and you get a copy to send to your audience. It's a powerful way. When you have a mic, you can meet anyone.
And this particular show through our channel and through you is internet radio. It is a live show every week. It's just not a podcast, and it makes a difference.
I think it does.
This person that said, well, I just want to introduce my company. A few years later, he's had 105,000 people listen to his shows.
Wow.
And people recognize him at conferences when he walks up.
Phenomenal.
He is a terrific guy and a terrific podcaster and a great marketer.
I think there's 3 or 4 value propositions for doing a podcast right off the bat, and you have to decide, do I want to pursue any of them or all of them? It certainly brands you a thought leader. Hey, I'm not any accountant. I'm the guy with the radio show. Look at what I know and look at who I know. It's an easy way to establish your thought leadership or to enhance your thought leadership. The second thing is you can meet anyone you want to meet. And then the third thing is if you give them a copy, they send it out to the world. They don't just bring you the content. They bring you the audience. Can I put an ad on your website? No. How about if I interview you and give a copy of it? Well, I'll put it on my website forever. Now you know it's about me. Yeah, but you talked with me about, you interviewed me. Those 3 things alone are powerful ways. I know there's more, the content itself and the audience you can build, but just establishing yourself as a thought leader, meeting people and having them share that with others, powerful, powerful medium.
Well, one of the things you have to decide, which you and I know, but not everybody in our audience does, is you have to determine who your audience is and their listening habits. If you want to start the podcast, you say, who is my audience?
Right.
Is it inside the company? Do I want to talk to employees? We've got a show with Lola, Jean Hopkins, and she interviews employees in the company, and it's mainly for employees. But
yeah. I was on a panel here, and Cox Communication locally does that. Spread out all over the country, big cable company, and they interview people in the company from the top to the bottom and share that with everybody. You want to meet the team? You want to hear the amazing stories or the funny stories, the inspirational stories? And their employee engagement has shot through the roof, they said, just because they're now collecting and sharing the stories of the people in the organization.
And these programs can be made private.
Yes,
only
right.
your employees can listen to them. So you may say, well, my customers and prospects are the people that I want to reach. And if people want to increase their business, establish thought leadership, increase their branding, that's certainly a big part of it. The third thing is the content from podcasts has 16 uses. And I know we've gone over some of them today.
At least 1,600, yeah.
Yeah, it's the website, emails to your audience. You can syndicate the show, and vendors can put the show on their websites. Ebooks, published books, testimonials from guests on the show. I know several authors that have gotten their entire content for their books and all the stories from guests from their podcasts.
We've got 2 shows on our network that have done that. Chris Dyer from Talent Talk Radio, and he was actually collecting these stories of, he talks about company culture all the time here. And a publisher approached him and said, I heard his show and said, we like the stories you're spinning every week. Would you like to turn this into a book? And he said, I've never written a book. They said, just collect all the stories from your podcast. Get transcripts done, and we'll edit them down, and we'll turn it into a book here. Rick Franzi's done the same thing here. He asked people, what's your guiding principle? And then he's turned that into a whole book of just little quotes from famous people he's talked to.
Stu Heineck,
same thing.
Wrote
exactly.
his book, How to Make Contact with Anyone.
Yeah. So there are uses for this that you hadn't even imagined for that content. We've all heard content is king, but it's king for a reason. I don't know if you've ever had the Content Marketing Institute on. I don't think you have. They were on one of our other shows. And their whole thesis is content is how you get found today. Don't tell me, I'm not looking for your company. I'm not even looking for the yellow page listing for what you do. I got a problem, and I'm looking for an answer. And if you can show me that you can address that answer through your video, through your blog, and through your podcast, I'll start a conversation with you.
I encourage many of our hosts to occasionally interview their customers.
Yeah, I think that's an untapped potential. It's one thing for me to tell you what I do. Have my customers tell it to you in their real, authentic voice. Wow. I don't know why more shows don't do that.
Well, a lot of those start off with, for instance, Matt might interview some of his customers.
Right.
And he might say, how did you solve this particular problem? And
yes.
they go through, hey, we had a pipeline problem, and we had to do this, and we had to do this, and we had to do this. And then we hired Matt.
Right.
And we did this. As a salesperson for many companies, I struggled to get more than 10 words of testimonial out of a satisfied customer.
Yes.
Usually
right.
They say, write it for me and I'll sign it.
Yeah, right.
Nobody said I'd get a 3,500 word testimonial on an average podcast.
Yeah, 30-minute testimony. Well, we have a show, our big branding company, and they handle Hoag Hospital, American Airlines, and other things, and they do the same thing. Every time they're finished with an engagement, they have them come and talk about it. All right, we got to do a commercial, I think, here. Should we break for a spot here?
Sure.
And tell people, and we'll come back.
All yours.
All right, hang on. We'll tell you more about what you should think about starting a podcast right after this. Today we're talking about podcasts, and if you've ever wanted to create one for your company or brand, there is a place you can go to. If you want to establish your thought leadership without writing a book, do you have a personal story, a personal brand that you want to sell? Do you want to tell people about who you are and why you're in business? There's a place for you. Funnel Media makes it easy so you can be heard by hundreds or thousands of listeners. Separate yourself from the crowd. Contact Funnel Media to bring your story to the marketplace. We'll teach you how to sell the story. You get the guest and we do the rest. We make it easy and convenient. If you want to learn how, simply go type in podcastsmadeeasy.com. Podcastsmadeeasy.com. That really is the key. You guys have not only found a way to teach people who aren't broadcasters how to broadcast live and then to turn it into podcasts, but you do all the back-end work, too, which people don't realize. When I was in real radio 100 years ago when the show was over, it was over. Now it just begins. You got to write a post. You got to push it out. You got to get a transcript done. You got to push it out on social media and all the other places that you get the guest a copy, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, podcasts are actually cleaner than terrestrial radio because the producers of these shows, if you're hiring a professional firm like Funnel Media,
right,
we actually take the podcast and clean it all up and take out the ums and ahs and the you-knows and the coughs like I had a little while ago. And
right,
we take
exactly.
out all the dog was barking in the background. We take all those things out, and you get a very professional, clean message.
And so you get a transcript done, so that now you've got a written record of it. You've got audio, and you've got written that you can turn into a blog, or you can pull out snippets and testimonials and other little sound bites and repurpose and reuse those. It's cutting it up and reusing it as many ways as possible and sharing it with the world, getting it on all the podcast aggregators. And you're sort of like the Huffington Post of podcasts. You pull them all together, these shows built around sales and sales funnels, and you collect them all so that they all get a bigger audience. And then, obviously, you sell ads to that channel and do everything else to promote it as well.
Well, one of the podcasts on our channel has gotten over a little over 500 shows.
Wow.
And we figure we've got over 1 million words stacked in there.
Jeez.
For all of these hosts and guests and stories, which brings us partially to this. If you're going to start a podcast, you have to decide who's going to handle which tasks internally or which that you want to outsource. Now, the first thing a podcaster, a host has to ask is who's going to schedule guests. Maybe he does or she does, or somebody in marketing. Then they have to figure out who's going to produce the podcast, where are we going to store it.
Right.
If somebody's going to have to edit the program, publish the program, and promote the program.
And get transcripts and all the other stuff and figure out how to use that content intelligently here. It's a strategy. That's what a producer does. It's in traditional radio, the producer was there really just to get the guests and maybe come up with sort of an arc for the show, what kind of shows you're going to produce. You guys do that as well. I know you give a lot of training, a lot of help to people. I came out of radio, but most people have no understanding of how to do this, how to talk, and how to interview people.
Well, that's why it's a podcast made easy, simply because most people know how to interview, they know how to talk, they know how to get on the program. And one of the big benefits really turns out to be after doing 10 or 15 or 20 programs, these hosts hone their verbal skills tremendously.
Absolutely.
Each one of them says, I'm a much better speaker now that I've been doing these internet radio podcasting programs. I've got rid of my ums and ahs and my verbal crutches. I'm more intentional in speaking. It really comes down to you have to decide who's going to handle these things.
Right.
Now, most people want to do the podcast, but they don't want to do all the back end work.
No, and podcasting, I think that's one of the misconceptions. Podcasting, by definition, was a do-it-yourself medium. Anybody, you get a mic, you record it into a laptop, and presto, you got a podcast. But how are you going to have guests? How are you going to get the guests in there? How are you going to do it live? That's a real trick that few can do. Are you going to then take that content and polish it up? Are you going to get transcripts? Are you going to do long posts, because those posts are what follow it to iTunes and all the other stuff here? Are you going to cut it and repurpose it? And then how are you going to promote it? People are like, oh my God, I just want to record these conversations. That's the start of the funnel, not the end of the funnel. And that's what people don't realize. And that's why so few, you talk about how many podcasts there are, I'll bet there are quite a few of them that don't last more than a few episodes because they find out this is a lot of work.
And those episodes stay up because they've registered it with Apple Podcasts and other places, and they stay there forever, but they're not really active.
Right, exactly.
A producer for a podcast at a company can say, well, we can put this on our blog, we can put the embed code, but we can give it to our guest as the embeddable code, and they can put it on their site. We can put this in our collateral. We can put the stories in the collateral. We can use the testimonial. We can use it for the ebook. We can use it for the book.
We can build conferences around it. Suddenly you're meeting all these guests. Well, what do? Let's collect them and turn them into a conference or an event. So many creative things. Every year I think, well, that's it. I can't come up with any more. And then somebody else will come up with one. I'll give you a crazy one. So we had one of our shows here. He started asking everybody, what's your favorite book? That became so popular, he started putting links in the show notes to the books so everybody could find them. And he ended up creating a book club. He does HR for HR directors, that they all now get together and just chat about books. He's now found a new way to bond with all these guests that he had because they all love talking about what book they read. Who knew? There's a really extreme example of something developing out of a conversation that he would have never anticipated.
Everyone that does a podcast must understand that the content has to be interesting. It's all about entertainment. As a friend of mine said to me, and he said, boy, those podcasts, a lot of people forget. It's all about entertainment.
Yeah, well, it's storytelling. I studied screenwriting for 1,000,000 years and thought I was going to do that. And there are fundamental elements to storytelling. It starts with the setup. Here's what the hero's up against. And then that hero's journey, it gets tougher and it can't get any worse. Oh, it gets worse. And then you always got to leave them on some up note. But there's hope. Here's the takeaways. If you can go through that kind of little emotional arc, and I know it's hard to do in some dry business subjects, but if you can really elicit those emotions along the way, that's a story that people will remember and tell over and over again. That's an art, and that's why people should work with you or others, because it's more than just talking.
Well, the shows are very interesting because we've got different hosts that do different things. Pat Morrissey at Altify, he does a lot of monologues as well as interview some authors.
Right.
And the monologues are super. We've got some hosts that do how-to shows. CRM Radio, they go ahead and Paul Peterson, he does a how-to show very often.
Right, lots of tangible tips and ideas and stuff, right.
It kind of comes to also, how long should it be? We started off with 1-hour shows.
Yeah, I think
found out that 30-minute shows seem to be best because some guests ran out of steam at 45 minutes into the show.
Yep, and I think 30 minutes is the average gym time, walk time, drive time. I think that's the sweet spot. That's why TED Talks are like 20 minutes as well. It's that kind of extended conversation.
Well, I have found that 5- and 10-minute shows work really well on tips, and we get great listenership.
Tips, yes. It's hard to tell a story in 5 minutes that you're going to remember, or to really dive into somebody. If you really want to get to know somebody, I think that's got to be more 30 minutes. But again, it's the purpose of the show. You're just creating little snippets of content, or you want to do a deep dive, let's meet somebody and pick their brain here and get to know.
Well, that's what a 25-minute show is. A 25-minute show is 3,500 to 5,000 words.
Right.
That's a lot of talking that can be parsed and sectioned out and put in other places, but nobody runs out of steam in that 25 minutes.
Well, we're running out of steam. We only got a couple minutes left here, so what do you want to wrap up with here?
I think you should wrap up.
I say it's the power of podcasting. Go look up the Infinite Dial report from Edison every year. You'll see the growth of the medium, who's listening, how long they're listening, and the power of it is storytelling, long-form storytelling that you can hear instantly on the one device you carry with you all day long, that 4-inch screen. It's not designed to read. It's designed to show me something or tell me something. And the power of telling you is they can do it when they can't do anything else.
Thanks a lot, Paul. I appreciate it. It's always fun to be on a show with you.
Yeah, same as always. I look forward to another 10 years. Who knows where this will be in 10 years from now here?
We'll still be here, Paul, eating black bananas and talking about podcasting.
Exactly. You've been listening to another example of what we do here on the Funnel Radio Network with the flagship show, SLMA. Find out how you can set your own podcast in motion. Contact them. Find out how easy it is. You get the guests, they do the rest. Right here on the Funnel Radio Network for at-work listeners like you.